You've been searching your whole life. For peace. For answers. For the feeling that you've finally arrived somewhere. You imagine there's a barrier between where you are and where you want to be. A gate that remains stubbornly closed no matter how hard you push. But what if there is no gate at all? What if the barrier you've been struggling against is actually made of nothing? What if you've been standing in the place you were trying to reach this entire time? Tonight we explore one of the most profound teachings in all of Buddhism, the Gateless Gate. And by the end of this journey, you might discover that the peace you've been seeking has been here all along, patient, waiting for you to simply stop searching. Welcome to Cosmic Sleep Stories. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through ancient wisdom, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, all you need to do is rest. Let your body settle wherever you are. There is nothing you need to figure out tonight. Nothing you need to achieve or understand. Simply listen and let these ancient teachings wash over you like gentle rain falling on soft earth. Take a slow breath and let's begin our journey together. From the time we are young, we begin to feel that something separates us from where we want to be. We sense a gap between ourselves and happiness, between our current life and the life we imagine we should be living. This feeling is so familiar that we rarely question it. We simply accept that there is a barrier, and we spend our energy trying to get past it. We work hard. We improve ourselves. We seek answers and accumulate knowledge. We do everything we can think of to break through to the other side, to finally arrive at that place where we will feel whole and at peace. But Zen asks us to look more carefully at this barrier we are so determined to overcome. Is it actually there? Can we touch it, see it, point to where it begins and ends? Or is it something we have imagined into existence? A wall made entirely of belief. The Gateless Gate is a teaching that has been passed down through many generations. It points to something both simple and profound. The gate we seek to pass through does not exist. It never did. We have been struggling against something that was never really there, exhausting ourselves trying to open a door that was always open. As you settle deeper now, let that sink in gently. You don't need to understand it with your mind. Just let it rest somewhere in your awareness as we begin. In a region of gentle hills and winding roads, there lived a young man named Run who carried a restlessness in his heart. From childhood, he had felt that something was missing from his life, though he could never quite say what. He looked at the people around him going about their daily tasks and wondered how they could seem so content. As Rin grew older, this restlessness became a kind of hunger. He heard travelers speak of distant places where wise people lived, where ancient truths were taught, where those who were worthy could find lasting peace. These stories fed his longing. Somewhere out there, he became certain, was the answer he sought. One story captivated him above all others. It was said that hidden in the mountains was a garden of extraordinary beauty, a place where those who entered found their restlessness dissolve like morning dew. The garden had no name, and its location was a secret passed only through whispers. But those who had seen it, the stories claimed, were forever changed. Rin decided he would find this garden. He saved what money he could. He asked every traveler and merchant about the hidden place. Most had never heard of it. A few had heard rumors, pointing vaguely toward one mountain range or another. Armed with these fragments, Rin set out. The search consumed years of his life. He climbed mountain paths that grew narrow and treacherous. He crossed rivers on bridges that swayed in the wind. He slept in caves and under the open sky. He asked everyone he met about the hidden garden, and the answers he received were always different. Some said it was to the east. Others pointed west. Some claimed it did not exist at all, that it was only a story people told to give the restless something to chase. But Rin could not accept this. The longing in his heart was too real. The garden had to exist. He simply had not searched hard enough, had not traveled far enough. So he continued, year after year, his youth slowly giving way to the weathered look of one who has spent too long on the road. Let yourself drift with Ren's journey as you rest. Feel the weariness of endless searching, the hope that keeps you moving even when you're exhausted. We've all carried this somewhere in our hearts. One afternoon, when Ren was no longer young, he found himself on a dusty road that wound through a valley of wildflowers. He had been walking since dawn, and his legs ached. His water was nearly gone. Up ahead, he saw a small tea stall set up beside the road, where an old woman sat in the shade of a faded cloth awning. Ren approached and lowered himself onto a wooden bench across from her. His body was grateful to rest. The woman asked if he would like tea. Her voice was unhurried, like a stream that has been flowing for a very long time. "Please," Ren said. She poured him a cup with steady hands. Her face was deeply lined, her hair white as snow, but her eyes held a brightness that made Ren think of clear water reflecting sky. "You have been walking a long time," she observed. "Where are you traveling?" Ren hesitated. After so many years, he felt almost foolish explaining his quest. But something about the woman's patient attention invited honesty. "I am searching for a garden," he said. "A hidden garden in the mountains. They say those who find it discover lasting peace. I have been looking for many years." The old woman nodded slowly, as if this were not an unusual thing to hear. "Many years is a long time. You must want this peace very much." "I do." Ren heard the weariness in his own voice. "But sometimes I wonder if I will ever find it. The garden seems to move. Everyone points in a different direction. I begin to doubt it even exists. And yet you continue searching. What else can I do? The longing does not stop. I cannot simply go home and pretend I do not feel it." The old woman was quiet for a moment, looking out at the valley around them. The afternoon light fell golden across the hills, and the wildflowers moved gently in the breeze. "Tell me," she said, "what do you imagine this garden looks like? If you were to find it tomorrow, what would you see?" Ren had thought about this countless times. The images came easily. "There would be flowers everywhere," he said. "Every color you could imagine. The air would be perfectly still, filled with a peace you could almost touch. Birds would be singing. The light would be soft and golden, falling through leaves in patterns that seemed almost alive." He paused, feeling the ache of longing in his chest. "And when you entered, all the restlessness would simply melt away. You would finally be home." The old woman listened with her eyes half closed. When he finished, she nodded again. "That is a beautiful vision," she said. Then she lifted her hand and gestured at the valley around them. "Tell me what you see here." Ren looked. He had been so tired when he arrived that he had barely noticed his surroundings. Now he saw the hills covered with wildflowers, purple and yellow and white, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. The air was warm and still, except for that gentle movement. Birds sang from somewhere nearby, their calls weaving together into something like music. The light of the afternoon sun fell soft and golden across everything, filtered through the leaves of the trees that lined the road. He looked back at the old woman, confused. She smiled gently. "Travelers have passed through this valley for generations," she said. "Many of them are searching just as you are. They hurry through with their eyes fixed on the mountains ahead, certain that what they seek is farther on. They never stop to see where they actually are." Ren felt something shift in his chest, though he resisted it. "But this cannot be the garden. There are no walls around it. There is no entrance I pass through. It is just an ordinary valley on an ordinary road." "Ah," the old woman said. "The walls. The entrance. Tell me, what do you imagine the walls of the hidden garden are made from? What does its gate look like?" Ren opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He realized he had never questioned this. He had assumed there would be walls, a gate, a clear boundary between outside and inside. But the stories had never actually described such things. He had added them himself, without even noticing. As you drift deeper into rest, feel this moment with Ren. The moment when everything he assumed begins to dissolve. The barrier he believed in starting to fade like morning mist. The old woman poured him more tea. The steam rose in delicate curls and disappeared into the air. "Many seekers imagine a wall where there is none," she said. "They believe something separates them from what they seek. And so they search for a gate, an entrance, a way through. They walk past 1,000 beautiful valleys because they are looking for the boundary that will tell them they have arrived." She paused and looked at him directly. "But what if there is no wall? What if the separation exists only in the believing?" Ren sat with this for a long while. The tea was warm and slightly sweet. A bird landed on a branch nearby and watched him with small bright eyes. The flowers continued their gentle movement in the breeze, unhurried, unconcerned with his confusion. "Are you saying," he said slowly, "that this is the garden? This valley right here?" "I am saying there is no hidden garden with walls and a gate. There never was. There is only the world itself, always present, always available, always offering its beauty to anyone willing to see." She gestured again at the valley around them. The garden is wherever someone stops searching long enough to notice what is actually here. The gate is simply the moment of seeing. You have been walking through the garden your entire life. You were just too busy looking for it to notice. Rin felt tears prick his eyes, though he could not say if they were tears of grief or relief. He thought of all the years he had spent searching. All the mountains climbed, rivers crossed, strangers questioned. He had been so certain the garden was elsewhere that he needed to find the entrance and pass through. He had walked through 1,000 beautiful places without seeing any of them because he was always looking ahead, always believing the real garden was farther on. All this time, he said quietly, all these years were not wasted, the old woman said gently. They brought you here. They brought you to this moment, to this valley, to this cup of tea. Sometimes we need to search before we can stop searching. Sometimes we need to walk very far before we can see where we already are. Rin stayed in that valley for several days. He slept under the stars and woke to the songs of birds. He walked among the wildflowers and felt the sun on his face. The restlessness that had driven him for so long grew quiet, not because he had found something new, but because he had finally stopped to receive what had always been offered. On the morning he left, he thanked the old woman for what she had shown him. She shook her head. I showed you nothing. I only pointed at what was already here. You were the one who finally let yourself see it. When Rin eventually returned to his home village, people noticed something different about him. He walked more slowly. He seemed to actually see the things he looked at. When asked about his travels, he would only smile and say that he had found what he was looking for. Where was it? They would ask. How far did you have to go? And Rin would gesture at whatever was around them. The fields, the sky, the simple buildings of the village. And say, not far at all. It was here all along. I just had to stop looking for it somewhere else. Let that story settle into your awareness as you rest. Rin searched for years, climbed mountains, crossed rivers, all to discover that what he sought was wherever he was willing to see it. The gate was never locked. There was no gate at all. This is the first truth of the Gateless Gate. The barrier we struggle against is made entirely of belief, constructed from our certainty that we are somehow separate from where we need to be. When we stop and really look, we find that we were standing in the garden all along. Zen teaches us that we suffer from a kind of spiritual blindness. We imagine a gate between ourselves and what we seek. This gate feels so real that we exhaust ourselves trying to find the key, the secret, the worthiness that will finally let us through. But the Gateless Gate points to something much simpler. There is no wall. There never was. The barrier exists only because we believe it does. When the believing grows quiet, even for a moment, we discover that we were never outside. We were always here. As your breathing continues, soft and natural, feel how you are already held by this moment, without needing to push through any barrier. There is nothing to prove, nowhere to arrive. Simply rest here in the gentle truth of being present. Now let's explore another layer of this teaching. Because understanding that the barrier is an illusion is one thing. Seeing how we build it ourselves is another. The gate we struggle against is not placed there by life or by the universe. It is not a test imposed by some higher power. We build it ourselves, without even realizing what we are doing. This happens in a subtle way. We feel a longing for something more, something deeper. And so we begin to seek. We prepare ourselves. We work to become ready. We imagine that there is a threshold we must cross. And we do everything we can to reach it. But here is the paradox that Zen points to. The very act of seeking creates the sense that there is something to seek. The effort to break through creates the feeling that there is something to break through. Our preparation for arrival keeps arrival forever in the future. Buddhism teaches that grasping causes suffering, and we can grasp even at liberation. We can want peace so badly that our wanting becomes the very thing that disturbs our peace. We can try so hard to be present that our trying pulls us out of presence. Let yourself rest with this paradox. Don't try to solve it. Just let it be there, like a koan settling into stillness. In a city known for its fine pottery, there lived a young woman named Nara who had given her life to working with clay. From the time she could hold a tool in her hands, she had shaped and formed and fired. Her pieces were good, her neighbors said, perhaps even very good. But Nara did not feel satisfied. She wanted to learn from the best, to discover secrets that ordinary potters did not know. She had heard of a master named Suki who lived on the outskirts of the city. He was very old, it was said, and his work was considered among the finest ever created. Students came from distant provinces hoping to learn from him. But Master Suki was known to be selective. He would only teach those who proved themselves worthy. The test, according to rumor, was this. A student must bring a vessel of their own making, something that demonstrated true skill and understanding. Master Suki would examine it carefully. If it met his standards, he would accept the student. If not, he would send them away without a word. Nara was terrified. She looked at her work and saw only flaws. The curves were not quite right. The glazes were not quite pure. How could she possibly create something worthy of a master's attention? But the longing to learn was stronger than her fear. She began to work. Day after day, she sat at her wheel, shaping bowl after bowl, cup after cup. Each time she finished a piece, she would examine it closely, turning it in her hands, holding it up to the light. And each time she would find something wrong. A slight unevenness in the rim. A tiny bubble in the glaze. A curve that did not flow quite as it should. She would set the piece aside and begin again. Weeks passed, then months. Nara's workshop filled with rejected pieces, stacked in corners and piled along walls. Her friends began to worry about her. She barely slept. She barely ate. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her whole being was focused on creating the one perfect vessel that would open the gate to Master Suki's teaching. "You are working too hard," her friend Lon told her one evening. "The pieces you have made are beautiful. Any one of them would impress a master." Nara shook her head. "You do not understand. Master Suki only accepts the worthy. If I bring something flawed, he will send me away. I will have lost my only chance. How do you know what he considers worthy? Everyone knows. The test is famous. Only the truly skilled are accepted." As you drift now, feel Nara's exhaustion. The way she tortures herself with impossible standards. We've all done this. Built gates of our own worthiness. Convinced we must prove something before we can be accepted. Finally, after nearly a year, Nara made a bowl that she could not immediately find fault with. It was simple and graceful, with a glaze the color of pale morning sky. The walls were even. The curve was true. She held it in her hands and turned it again and again, searching for the flaw that must be there. But she could not find it. For the first time in many months, she felt a small hope. Perhaps this one would be enough. She wrapped the bowl carefully in soft cloth and placed it in a basket. She barely slept that night. And in the morning she set out for Master Suki's workshop. The journey took her through the city and out along a quiet road lined with trees. As she walked, her anxiety grew. What if she had missed something? What if there was a flaw she had not seen? What if Master Suki found it immediately and sent her away? The workshop was a humble place, smaller than she had expected, set among trees at the edge of a quiet stream. The morning light fell soft through the leaves, dappling the ground with shifting patterns. An old man sat outside on a low wooden stool, shaping a piece of clay with hands that moved like water. He did not look up as she approached, but continued working with an absorption that seemed complete. Nara waited. She did not want to interrupt. But after a while, the old man set down his work and raised his eyes to her. "You have come a long way," he said. His voice was quiet and unhurried. "Yes, Master Suki. I have come to ask if you will teach me." Nara bowed deeply. "I have brought a vessel for your examination. I hope it will prove me worthy of your instruction." She unwrapped the bowl with trembling hands and held it out to him. Master Suki took it gently. He turned it in his hands, examining it from different angles. The pale glaze caught the morning light. He ran his fingers along the rim, felt the weight of it, looked at the way the curve flowed from base to lip. Then he set it aside on a small wooden table. Nara's heart sank. She had seen no approval in his face, no nod of acceptance. Only that calm, unreadable expression. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I know it is not perfect. There must be flaws I did not see. I worked for almost a year, but perhaps that was not long enough. If you would give me more time, I could try again. I could bring you something better." Master Suki held up his hand gently, and she fell silent. "The bowl is well made," he said. "There is nothing wrong with it." Nara blinked. "Then you will accept me as a student?" "I will, but not because of the bowl. I do not understand." Master Suki looked at her with eyes that held something like compassion. "There is no test," he said simply. "There never was." The words did not make sense. Nara stared at him. "But everyone says." "I know what everyone says. I have heard the stories for many years. Students arrive at my door clutching their finest work, terrified they will be found unworthy. They tell me about the test, the high standards, the judgment they are certain they will face. He shook his head slowly. I do not know who started these stories, but they are not true. I have never required a worthy vessel from anyone. I have never turned away a sincere student. Never? Never. I teach anyone who genuinely wants to learn. That is my only requirement. A willing heart and patient hands. Skill can be developed over time. What matters is the willingness to begin. Let that revelation wash over you as you rest. All that suffering, all that fear, all those sleepless nights. And the gate was never locked. It was never even there. Nara thought of all the months she had spent in anguish. All the sleepless nights. All the bowls she had made and rejected, certain that she was not yet good enough. She thought of how she had tortured herself with the belief that she had to prove something before she could be accepted. All those pieces I made, she said quietly. All that fear. Were not wasted, Master Suki said. You learned much in that year of work. Your hands grew more skilled. Your eye grew more refined. But the learning did not happen because you were preparing for a test. It happened because you were working with clay, which is what potters do. He stood and gestured for her to sit beside him, where another stool waited near a second wheel. The gate you feared was never locked, he said. It was never even closed. It was built entirely from your own expectations, your own belief that you had to prove yourself before you could be welcomed. But you were welcome from the first moment you wanted to learn. You simply did not know it. Nara sat down slowly. The wheel before her was smooth and worn from years of use. The clay beside it was cool and damp, ready to be shaped. So the test, she said, all those stories about worthiness and judgment, are gates that students build for themselves. I cannot stop them from building these gates. I can only tell them when they arrive that the gates were never real. He settled onto his own stool and began to center a new piece of clay. Now let us begin. There is much to learn, and the morning is pleasant. In the years that followed, Nara became one of Master Suki's most dedicated students. Her work grew and deepened in ways she had never imagined possible. But she never forgot the lesson of that first morning. Whenever new students arrived, anxious and uncertain, clutching their best work and hoping it would be good enough, Nara would sit with them. She would tell them what she had learned. There is no test, she would say gently. There never was. The worthiness you are trying to prove is already yours. The gate you fear is made of nothing but your own belief. Set down your burden. You are already welcome here. This story shows us how we create our own obstacles. Nara longed to learn, but her preparation became a way of avoiding it. Each thing she needed to do before she could go was a stone in the wall she was building between herself and her deepest longing. Zen teaches that our seeking can become what prevents us from finding. We want something so much that we convince ourselves we must prepare endlessly before we can have it. But the preparation never ends because we are using it to avoid the vulnerability of actually stepping forward. The gateless gate is not something we open through perfect preparation. It is something we walk through when we finally stop insisting that we must be ready first. Readiness is not a state we achieve. It is a choice we make, again and again, to move toward what matters even though we feel imperfect and uncertain. As your body settles deeper into rest, notice how this moment asks nothing of you. You don't need to be ready. You don't need to prove anything. This breath is already enough. Now let's explore what happens when we finally stop waiting and discover what has been here all along. In a village at the foot of a sacred mountain, there lived a woman named Lin who had dreamed her whole life of making a pilgrimage to the temple at the summit. The temple was famous throughout the land. It was said that those who prayed there received blessings that transformed their lives. Lin had wanted to go since she was a young girl, when her grandmother first told her stories of the temple. But somehow the time had never been right. When she was young, she had no money for such a journey. She needed to work, to help her family, to save what little she could. She told herself she would go when she had saved enough. When she had saved enough, she realized she did not know the proper prayers to recite at the temple. What if she went all that way and did not know what to say? She would waste the opportunity. She began to study, to learn the prayers by heart, to practice them until they flowed without hesitation. When she knew the prayers, she noticed that her robes were worn and patched. How could she appear at a sacred temple in such shabby clothing? She would need to weave new cloth, to sew new robes, to present herself properly before the divine. When the robes were finished, she remembered that her children were still young. They needed her. How could she leave them for the weeks the journey would require? She would wait until they were grown, until they no longer depended on her daily care. Years passed this way. One preparation led to another. One reason to wait gave way to the next. Lynn never doubted that she would make the pilgrimage someday. She simply had not yet completed all the necessary preparations. By the time her children were grown and her robes were fine and her prayers were perfect, Lynn was no longer young. Her hair had turned gray. Her joints ached on cold mornings. She looked at the mountain in the distance and wondered if she still had the strength for such a climb. Feel this with Lynn as you rest. The endless postponing. Always one more thing before you can begin. We've all lived some version of this story. One autumn afternoon, a traveling monk passed through her village. His robes were dusty from the road, his sandals worn thin. He stopped at the well to draw water, and Lynn offered him tea and a place to rest. "Thank you for your kindness," the monk said, settling onto a bench in the shade of her small garden. "I have been walking many days." "Where have you come from?" Lynn asked. "From the east. And before that, the south. I have been walking for many years." "Really? Do you never stay in one place? Do you have no destination?" The monk smiled. "Every place is my destination. I arrive constantly, wherever I happen to be." Lynn did not quite understand this, but she let it pass. "I have a destination," she said. "The temple on the mountain. I have been preparing to go there my whole life." "Ah, the temple. It is a beautiful place. I was there last spring." Lynn felt a pang of longing so sharp it surprised her. "You have been there. What was it like?" "Quiet. Peaceful. The monks who tended are kind. The view from the summit shows the whole valley spread out below like a painting." He sipped his tea. "When do you plan to make your journey?" Lynn hesitated. The question, so simple, suddenly felt heavy. "Soon," she said. "When I am ready." "When will that be?" She opened her mouth to answer, but found she did not know what to say. When would she be ready? She had been preparing for decades. There was always one more thing to do, one more obstacle to clear, one more reason to wait. The monk watched her gently. "May I ask what you are waiting for?" Lynn thought about all her preparations. The money she had saved, the prayers she had learned, the robes she had sewn, the children she had raised. Each one had seemed so necessary at the time. "I suppose I am waiting to be worthy," she said finally. "To be truly ready. To have done everything that should be done before such a journey. And what if you are never ready? What if there is always one more thing to prepare?" The question hung in the air between them. Lynn felt something uncomfortable stirring in her chest. "I do not know," she admitted. The monk set down his teacup. "May I tell you something I have learned in my years of walking?" "Please." "There is no state of perfect readiness. There is no moment when all preparations are complete and the path opens before us without obstacle. We imagine such a moment exists, and so we wait for it. We prepare for it. We delay our lives waiting for conditions to be just right." He paused. "But conditions are never just right. Life is always imperfect, unfinished, in motion. If we wait for perfect readiness, we wait forever." Lynn thought about her grandmother, who had first told her about the temple. Her grandmother had never made the pilgrimage either. She too had always been preparing, always waiting. She had died still waiting. "But surely some preparation is necessary," Lynn said. "I cannot just set out with nothing." "Of course, practical preparations have their place. But there is a difference between practical preparation and the endless delay of the heart. You have money. You know the prayers. Your children are grown. What are you truly waiting for?" Lynn looked at her hands, weathered from years of work. She thought about all the reasons she had given herself, all the gates she had placed between herself and the mountain. And she realized something she had never quite seen before. "I am afraid," she said quietly. "I am afraid that when I finally go, it will not be what I imagined. That I will arrive and find nothing special. That all these years of dreaming will end in disappointment." The monk nodded slowly. "So you keep preparing because as long as you are preparing, the dream remains perfect. The temple in your imagination can never disappoint you. It is only the real temple that carries that risk." Tears pricked at Lynn's eyes. "Yes, I think that is true. And so the preparation becomes a gate. A gate you built yourself without realizing it. A way of keeping the journey forever in the future, where it is safe from the imperfection of actually happening." They sat in silence for a while. A bird sang somewhere in the garden. The afternoon light grew softer as the sun moved toward the hills. "How do I stop?" Lynn asked finally. "How do I stop building gates? You see what you are doing. That is the beginning. And then you take a step. Not a perfect step. Not a fully prepared step. just a step in the direction you have always wanted to go. But what if I am not ready? You are ready enough. You have always been ready enough. The readiness you seek is not something you achieve. It is something you choose. You choose to begin even though conditions are imperfect. You choose to walk even though you do not know exactly what you will find. Let that wisdom settle as you drift. You are ready enough. You have always been ready enough. The perfect moment will never come. But this moment is here, patient, waiting. After the monk left, Lynn sat for a long time in her garden. She thought about all the years she had spent preparing, all the gates she had built between herself and the journey she longed to take. She saw now that her preparations had become a kind of hiding, a way of keeping herself safe from the risk of actually living. The next morning, she put on her fine robes. She took the money she had saved. She recited the prayers she had learned, just to feel them on her lips. And then she stepped out of her door and began to walk. The journey was not easy. Her joints ached. The path was steeper than she had imagined. She had to rest often. But with each step, she felt something loosening in her chest. The gate she had built was dissolving, not because she had finally become ready, but because she had finally stopped waiting for readiness that would never come. When she reached the temple, it was both more and less than she had imagined. The monks were kind, as the traveler had said. The view was beautiful, but there was no magical transformation, no sudden illumination. There was simply the quiet joy of having arrived, of having finally taken the journey she had dreamed of for so long. On the way down the mountain, Lynn understood something important. The temple had not changed her. What had changed her was the decision to stop waiting, the willingness to walk through the gate she had built, even though she had not felt ready. The gate had never been locked from the outside. She had been holding it closed herself all those years, with her endless preparations. This is the deep truth of the Gateless Gate. We create our own obstacles through our seeking, our preparing, our waiting for perfect conditions. But perfection never comes. Readiness is not something we achieve. It is something we choose, moment by moment, by being willing to move forward even when we feel uncertain. As your breathing grows slower and deeper, rest in this knowing. You are ready enough, right now, for this moment. Nothing more is required. Now, as we drift toward deeper rest, let's explore what we find when we finally stop seeking and open our eyes to what has been here all along. The spiritual journey does not take us to some extraordinary realm beyond ordinary life. It brings us back to where we started, but with eyes that can finally see. The Gateless Gate leads not to a special place reserved for the awakened. It leads right here, to this very life, to the dishes and the sweeping and the morning light through the window. It leads us home to the ordinary, which we discover was sacred all along. In a fishing village where the sea met the shore in an endless rhythm of coming and going, there lived a man named Tao who carried a heaviness in his heart. Years ago, he had been a monk in a mountain monastery. He had taken vows, shaved his head, devoted himself to the path of awakening. He had believed with the fervor of youth that he would attain enlightenment if he only practiced hard enough. But enlightenment had not come. Years of meditation, years of discipline, years of following every instruction his teachers gave him, and still he felt like the same confused person he had always been. Eventually, the weight of his perceived failure became too heavy. He left the monastery and returned to the world. He wandered for a time, lost and purposeless, until he came to this fishing village and found work on a boat. The labor was hard and simple. Wake before dawn, go out on the water, cast the nets, haul in the catch, come home as the sun set, sleep, repeat. He told no one about his past as a monk. He wanted to forget that chapter of his life, to pretend it had never happened. There was an old fisherman named Jing who worked the boat beside Tao. He was weathered by decades of sun and salt, his face lined like driftwood, his hands thick with calluses. He moved slowly but surely, with the economy of motion that comes from doing the same tasks for a lifetime. There was something peaceful about him that Tao noticed, but did not understand. One evening after the boats had been secured and the catch sold at market, Tao found himself sitting on the dock beside Jing. The sun was setting over the water, painting the waves in shades of orange and gold. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries mixing with the gentle lapping of water against wood. "You carry something heavy," Jing said, not looking at Tao, his eyes on the horizon. "I have watched you for months now. You work hard, but you are not really here. Your body pulls the net, but your mind is somewhere else. Tao was startled. He had not thought anyone noticed him at all. What do you mean? You move like a man who has given up. Like someone going through the motions of living while waiting for it to be over. Jing turned to look at him. What happened to you before you came here? For a long moment, Tao said nothing. The heaviness in his chest pressed down, as it always did when he thought about the monastery. But something about Jing's patient attention invited honesty. I was a monk, he said finally, for 15 years. In a monastery in the mountains. I devoted everything to the path. I wanted to awaken, to find the peace that the teachings promised. He paused, feeling the old shame rise. But I failed. I never achieved what I was seeking. In the end, I could not bear the pretense any longer, so I left. Jing nodded slowly, as if this were not surprising news. And you came here to forget. Yes, to do something simple. Something that does not require me to be more than I am. They sat in silence for a while. The sun continued its descent, the colors deepening across the water. I was also a seeker once, Jing said quietly. In my youth, I traveled to temples and sat with teachers. I wanted what you wanted. That final piece. That transformation that would make everything different. Tao looked at him with surprise. You were a seeker? For many years. I tried everything. I pushed myself to the limits of what body and mind could endure. I was certain that enlightenment was just around the corner, if I only tried a little harder. Jing smiled, a small smile touched with old memory. But it never came. The corner kept receding. The harder I tried, the further away it seemed. What happened? I gave up. Like you. I returned to my village, to my family's fishing boats, feeling that I had wasted my youth chasing something that did not exist. He gestured at the water, the boats, the simple dock where they sat. And I became a fisherman. This is what I have done for 50 years now. And you found peace here? In this simple life? Jing was quiet for a moment, considering the question. I found something, but not in the way I expected. Not through achievement or attainment. More like, giving up led to a kind of opening. What do you mean? When I stopped trying to reach enlightenment, something relaxed in me. I was just here, mending nets, watching the water, doing what needed to be done. And somewhere in that simplicity, in that release of striving, I began to notice something. A presence in ordinary moments. A peace that was not separate from the work, but somehow within it. Rest with this as you drift. The peace Jing found was not in achieving anything. It was in the letting go, in the stopping of the endless search. Jing picked up a piece of rope and began to coil it, his hands moving with unconscious skill. I realized that the monastery had taught me something important, even though I thought I had failed there. It taught me to pay attention, to be present with what I was doing. I just had not understood that this attention could happen anywhere, not only on a meditation cushion. It could happen while mending nets, while watching the sunrise over the water, while sitting on a dock at the end of the day. Tao felt something stir in him, a faint echo of something he had almost forgotten. So you found what you were seeking? Just by doing ordinary things? I found that what I was seeking was never somewhere else. It was always here, in whatever I was doing, if I was truly present with it. The gate I thought I had failed to pass through. It turned out there was no gate. I was already on the other side. I just could not see it because I was looking for something dramatic, something special. I missed the ordinary miracle that was right in front of me. Tao sat with this, feeling something loosen in his chest. It was strange to hear his own story reflected back at him, but with a different ending. But how? He asked. How did you make that shift? How did you go from feeling like a failure to finding peace in mending nets? Jing thought for a moment. It was not one thing. It was slow. At first, I was just going through the motions, like you. Numb. Disappointed. But the work has a way of wearing down the thoughts, if you let it. The sea does not care about your spiritual ambitions. The fish do not care whether you achieved enlightenment. They just are what they are, and the work is what it is. And eventually you either resist that, or you surrender to it. And you surrendered? Eventually. Though surrender is perhaps too dramatic a word. I just got tired of fighting. Tired of comparing my life to what I thought it should be. One morning I woke up and went out on the water, and it was just beautiful. The light, the waves, the feeling of the boat moving beneath me. And I was not thinking about what I had lost or what I had failed to achieve. I was just there. And something in me said, this is enough. This is more than enough. The sun had almost set now. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. The water lapped gently against the dock in its eternal rhythm. I feel like I wasted 15 years, Tao said quietly. All that practice, all that striving, and nothing to show for it. Jing shook his head slowly. Nothing is wasted. The monastery taught you things you do not even realize yet. It prepared you, even though the preparation did not look like success. And the feeling of failure, that too has its place. Sometimes we need to fail at finding what we seek before we can discover it was never lost. He stood, stretching his old bones, and looked down at Tao. Tomorrow when we go out on the water, try something. Do not think about the past or the future. Do not judge yourself as a failed monk or a resigned fisherman. Just be here, with the nets and the water and the sky. Feel your hands pulling the ropes. Feel the boat rocking beneath you. Let yourself be completely present with this simple work. He began to walk away, then paused and turned back. The enlightenment you sought in the monastery. I do not know if such a thing exists in the way we imagined it. But presence exists. Being fully here, fully alive to this moment that exists. And that may be all the enlightenment we ever needed. In the weeks that followed, Tao tried what Jing had suggested. At first it was difficult. His mind wanted to wander, to judge, to compare this simple life with his imagined failures. But slowly he began to find moments of genuine presence. The feel of the wet rope in his hands, the cry of the gulls, the smell of salt and fish, the way the morning light sparkled on the water. These moments were not dramatic. They were not the blinding insight he had once hoped for. But they were real. They were here. And they carried a quiet peace that his years of striving had never achieved. One morning, hauling in a heavy net, Tao suddenly laughed. Jing, working beside him, raised an eyebrow. What is funny? I spent 15 years trying to reach somewhere else, Tao said. Somewhere special, somewhere sacred. And here I am, covered in fish scales, doing the simplest work in the world. And this is it. This is what I was looking for. Not somewhere else. Right here. Jing smiled. The Gateless Gate. You have walked through. There is no gate. No, there never was. Just the willingness to be here. Fully here. Without needing to be anywhere else. As your mind grows quieter and sleep approaches, rest in this truth. The peace you seek is not somewhere else. Not in achievement. Not in transformation. It's here, in the simple act of being present with whatever life is offering right now. The Gateless Gate has been open all along. You've been walking through it with every breath. You just didn't know it because you were looking for something more dramatic, more special. But there is nothing more special than this. This breath, this moment, this simple presence. You are already home. You have always been home. The journey was only ever a circle, bringing you back to where you started, but with eyes that can finally see. There is no gate to open, no threshold to cross, no worthiness to prove. There is only this, only now, only the willingness to stop seeking and receive what has been offered all along. Let your body settle completely. Let your breathing slow. Let all the stories of seeking and failing and trying dissolve like mist in morning light. You are here. You have always been here. And here is exactly where you need to be. The Gateless Gate stands open, not somewhere ahead of you, not waiting for you to become worthy, but right here, right now, in this breath, in this moment of peaceful surrender. Simply rest, simply be, simply allow yourself to arrive at the place you never left. The searching can end, the striving can settle. There is just this, just the gentle recognition that you were always standing in the garden you were trying to reach. Sleep well, rest deeply. Let the ancient wisdom of the Gateless Gate carry you into peaceful dreams. You are home. Good night.